hold it.
Good. That's it. My name is Antonia Lom. I'm from Guadeloupe. I'm French. My biggest influence is Martin Luther King. I had a passion for Martin Luther King. And Gandhi also, because my mother is Indian, so I felt very close to Gandhi. I like his wisdom. I read a lot of his books when I was a little girl. I'm a CPA graduate, and the influence of Martin Luther King pushed me to move to America. My country is very racist. I'm from France also, and I did not like the way they treat black people in my country, even the way that family treat the darkest kids in the family. And of course, I was one of the challenge to be the darkest kid in the family, where I have brothers with green eyes and gray eyes, because my grandfather is from England, and my grandfather on my mother's side is from India. So it's a big mixture. Somehow the two African women put everything on me, which is beautiful.
It's working for you.
It's just working. And I took their wisdom. I listened to Martin Luther King a lot. And in 1971, I read the book about how they strive and how he valued the power of the mind, how he also valued that the woman value or the black person value is not in what they look like, it's in the power of the mind. And I took that word with me. When I graduated from college at 21 years old, I told my mother, everybody goes to Paris. From my country, everybody merged into Paris because they only talk French. But my mother speaks English, French, and Spanish. She makes sure that everybody in the house speaks English. So I know a little bit of English. I spoke it, but I didn't read it. I didn't write it. And I said, I think I'm good enough for America. Which I thought America was just Manhattan was America. So I came to the big country and I realized my aunt said, no, this is the Bronx. And I said, this is not New York. She said, no, and this is Manhattan. And I just couldn't get together how big this country was. And when I saw black people on TV, I was really impressed. When I came here, they had these shows in 1983. I moved here in 1983, right after college. I'm a CPA graduate. And I decided no business for me. I'm coming to America to meet black people, to see black people. I wanted to meet Stevie Wonder. I never get to see him. But I wanted to meet Stevie Wonder and just learn about the culture. I ended up in the Bronx. My aunt was very negative because she said, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. I said, well, I'm a college graduate. You cannot work without your papers. You have to be a maid. I said, no, I was raised for a maid, so I can't be a maid. And then I make my way. I decided I would work as a babysitter, which to me was great because this Jewish lady, she had a lot of respect for me, a lot of honor. And I decided if I can work for this lady for $150 a week, she gives me money to eat, to drink. I do not clean, I do not cook. That was better than working at the bank. I was happy. I stayed with her for 3 years, and I learned a little bit more how to work with children. My passion for children grew little by little. Even though I was a CPA person, a CPA graduate, I decided to work with children. I run a daycare in my house. When I couldn't get to work outside, I decided to run a daycare in the house. I was a provider for 5 years. They love it. Made a lot of money because I was teaching the kids French, and I was preparing the parent. I was taking information how to get the kids into best schools, the best schools in the city. So I was evaluating all the schools, and I sent them to the different places. I prepared the kids to get into the best schools in the city, and they were already bilingual by the time they leave my daycare. They were ready to go. Then when I closed the daycare, I decided to work at my daughter's school as volunteering at Tag Elementary School. I worked with them for 4 years. While I was waiting for my green card. The process to my green card, when I get my green card, that was it. I stayed with them for 4 years, and I realized that there was children in the school that would not go to gym, and I wonder why wouldn't these kids go to gym? The teacher told me these kids are asthma kids. I said, well, I have asthma also. And he said, well, these kids cannot do anything. So I said, let me look at your class. And when I look at the class, all the gym classes, they all start with jumping jacks. And I went to him and I said, kids with asthma will not do jumping jacks. So it was not really the activity that was blocking them, it's the way they start the activity. And it seems like all the schools are doing it the same way. Then I tell him, can I pull the kids to the side? I was a dance teacher for Police Athletic League for 7 years. Let me pull them to the side, put some music, and let them exercise with the music. And this worked beautifully. I studied a program with French. I had a lot of Chinese kids, and Chinese kids are very curious. Every time I'll take over the class for a teacher, they would tell me, teach us your language. So I'll teach them French, I'll teach them Creole, And little by little, it became a habit that all the classes would want me to take a leave with them and teach the kids for 30 minutes. And I realized the kids were catching on real fast. So I said, well, let me make a program for French. So I also have a program called French Intervention, Have Fun with French. And I studied in the school teaching French intervention. I had different schools call me for that. And when I studied in PS73, I was teaching the asthma workout. It didn't have a name yet. But after the third class, Channel 10 came over to interview me about the class. How could you get 128 kids? I had 128 students with asthma in one school. So I did 2 classes and I started working out with them, teaching them breathing technique. And we worked out and we had fun and we performed for the end of the year. They were very happy. And when they interviewed me, I decided I need to get a name because I had no name. It was just workout. And finally, I get the name Workout Asthma. It's been going on. I teach workout asthma. I took my license. I took my license in electronic also. I used to videotape for 10 years. I was a camera lady. And only in America you could do all these things. When I would go back home, I let people understand, well, you left as a businesswoman, but in America you could do different things. So as I'm growing up, I'm valuing Martin Luther King much more. Is that everything that he said that you can do it. And seeing that we had a black president, I know I can do all things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Miss Barbara?
Oh, wow.
Say your name and where you're from.
Okay. My name is Barbara. Okay, but my full name is Barbara Maynard Frazier. I was born and bred in Harlem. I don't even know how to begin this. My most influential people in my life would be my grandmothers and Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Okay. When I grew up here as a young girl in Harlem, and I actually grew up across the street from the Savoy. But when I grew up, I had to be the first to do everything. It was like, whatever, and I don't know, I don't never remember being a child, but I know I was a child. I grew up with adults, and I was treated, I could hold conversations with the adults. So I don't know like I tell my kids, I never was a child. I was always a caretaker because when it happened, I grew up with my grandmother. I had a Bermudian grandmother, and I had another grandmother that was born in Miami, Florida. My grandmother that was born in Miami, Florida, my voice is gonna be nervous. Her and Mary McLeod Bethune went to kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
So she was up first in a lot of things. She also was the first black person to be put on record in Miami, Florida. That was my mother's mother.
Wow.
And my grandfather came from Nassau in the Bahamas, and he built like 27 churches throughout Florida.
Wow.
So I more or less came through the ministry and in some kind of way. My grandmother came to New York with my mother, and my mother met my father, who was born in New York. So my grandmother from New York, my father's people, his father came from Nevis in the Virgin Islands. My grandmother came from Bermuda. But my father was born in New York and my mother was born in Miami. So going back there, she was like, I guess, a little Southern belle, and he was an aristocrat. Okay, my father had 6 brothers who ended up being like my brothers because I was raised by this maternal grandmother who was old-fashioned, where my grandmother from Miami was Martin. So here I am, a cross between the two. My grandmothers both were the same age. One seemed very old and one seemed very young, but they were the same age. But they had different lifestyles. So here I am, whenever I was born. I have a sister and a brother who's older than me. I have a sister, she's a famous artist, she's autistic. We all
Give
different.
her name.
Valerie Maynard.
Maynard.
She's an artist sculptor. And she does the subway on 25th Street. She's started the Studio Museum, you know.
Wow.
But anyway, here I am. I don't know what story I'm gonna give you because I was
We are documenting this, right?
I was more or less supposed to be the sickly child, so they told me through my history. I wasn't supposed to live past 12, so they told me. I know I had polio at a very early age, but whatever it was, I got the cure. They threw me in some water, I swear I'm gonna walk into that. That's all. And I knew I was in Bellevue Hospital. My father used to be a policeman, I know that also. So, as I remember, spiritual I know I am, in a way, because all I can remember as a little girl, whenever I was 6, somebody would say, oh, yeah, see, you pray, little girl. And I was the best prayer in the world. I knew how to pray. Even when I was younger, I talked to God all the time. I know I always did. So here I come with my grandmother. I'm with these uncles. I'm with my grandfather a long time ago. Whenever you came to this country, he worked in the Navy Yard. So if you wanted a job and you came into this country and he was a Mason, you had to come and see Uncle Joe to get you a job. So when you came up to my grandmother's house, which was one of these Harlem apartments, only 2 on the floor, which, you know, they had like 7, 8 rooms. My room was the maid's room. It was a little room off the kitchen. That was my room. I woke up in the morning, I was like a maid. Because my grandmother, she taught me, this one taught me culture. I can tell you the story how my grandmother met my grandfather, because I'm inquisitive, number one, from the time I could talk. I say, Grandma, how you meet Grandpa? Where'd you meet him from? She said, he came to see my madam. I never heard her say a mother. She came from Bermuda. He came to see my madam. He introduced me. He says, look at this Georgia. I love her. I want to take her to America. She looks like she can make me some fine boys. Meanwhile, she said she was swooning. She saw this fine guy coming in. She said, oh, my God. Where did he come from? Next thing I know, she's off to America with my grandfather. And she's making these boys, which my father was one of the children. They told me, these are stories I know, so I'm asking questions. They give me answers. I'm a child. So I go in the parlor with the gentleman. When you come in the house, the women went to the kitchen. The men went to like a little smoker parlor, and they would smoke pipes. You know, so who you think is packing the pipes? They asked Mrs. So-and-so, oh, Mrs. Jones, what kind of cigar smoke you want in your pipe? Then I go in the kitchen. Who's drinking tea and reading the tea leaves? Who's back in there reading the tea leaves? That's me, so I'm talking to the ladies. So I know the guys' stories, and I can run in between. And the ladies are talking about what's going on with them. So I'm saying, Mr. So-and-so, how come you married Mr. So-and-so? I'm asking, oh, my father told me who to marry. I had to come to America. It wasn't my choice. You didn't love him? It wasn't your choice? Oh, no. That's like a dream. I'm in a dream. They said, oh, no, they told us who to marry, you know. So I said, when I grow up, I'm not going to be like that. But meanwhile, I'm getting the answers. Okay. So here I come later on with my children. I didn't raise all my uncles, their children, they get married. I'm talking to their wives, I'm telling them about them, they tell me about them. So by the time I get married, and I got married very young, I was like 18, but I was going on 40 for today at 18. I mean, because where my head was, most kids wasn't. I used to go to camps. I was a counselor from the time I was 12. Because if you say run up the hill, I better run up first. If you say swim, I better hit that first. If you say dive, I better do that first. So, what can I tell you? I can't begin to tell you about me. It's too many phases about me.
Well, that was good, though. That was
So,
something
that's
really
part
good
of
to
me.
share. Wow.
Okay. I can't tell you. Too many stories in the story.
We're on
Ready,
to you now.
ma'am?
Say your name and where you're
My
from.
name is Charlie Rudolph Pyatt. And I think the greatest, I had so many influences in my life. It first started with my grandfather, my grandparents. They were very influential in my life. And then my parents. And then I was born in Haynesville, Alabama. I was born in the triangle of Selma, Montgomery, and Haynesville. So I was there when the civil rights age
When it
started,
hit.
with Dr. King, of course. And oftentimes we went to Montgomery because my parents worked in Montgomery, and I was there when the boycott started. And we visited his church on Dexter Avenue. His church is here, and the Capitol is here. Wide open space.
Wow.
And his church sat right here.
Wow.
I mean, you could walk there in a minute to his church. Beautiful scenery. Yeah. And after that, when I came out of high school, I came to Mount Vernon, and I lived with my aunts there, and they influenced my life. And I went to Westchester Community, and I worked in corporations. And I said to myself, well, this is not where I want to stop. I don't think I want to continue to work for other folks. And I tried to learn as much as I could from them, and I did. And I think a year or so later, I met my husband, who was James Pyatt, and he was in the service at the time. And I was working, and I was still in school. And when he finally got out, after 90 days, after 89 days, the Army said, we can't use you. They weren't supposed to take him from the staff. They weren't supposed to take him. And they kept him and released him one day before he was able to get benefits.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
But anyway, we got married, and the children came, and then we went into business, and we operated Gabriel's Flower Shop right here in the city for 38 years. And that was working for those corporations was a good learning
Yes.
spot for me. And I used to say to myself, well, what do they know that I don't know? And I tried to learn all I could from them. And I found out that they didn't know as much as I did. That was just the front.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had a beautiful family life. And when my husband and I got married, we didn't look at families as, oh, that's your family. And this is your family. It was one big family. We tried to bring the families together to make one big family. And we were a caring family. As Lillian said, people just didn't realize, they said, well, what kind of folks are you? You know, people don't live this way. You know, and today we try to keep that, you know, together.
Yeah.
We have a strong family relationship, and we want to keep it that way. Not just for our family only. We bring other people in, other people into our family. And my husband says he always wanted to put other people first. And there were times when he would say, well, let them go first. And I would say, well, go before me. and he would say, yes. Yes, let them go first. So he passed this past August, and the only thing he was concerned about, how is everybody else? How is everybody else? He said, I want my family to carry on, to carry on. So those are the good things, you know. And my children, they're good. We didn't have to pounce on them a lot, you know, because they knew. They knew.
No, they don't want
When
to
Poppy
touch the
said,
grandbabies, no.
this is the way it's supposed to be, they listen.
Yeah.
They listen. So I've had strong men in my family all the way. And my husband's parents, they were my parents. They were my parents. No difference.
What a blessing.
No difference. And I'm truly grateful and thankful to God.
Yeah. What a blessing.
Excellent.
And what's yours? Your
My name is Claudia Brown. I was born and raised here in New York City. And the most influential people in my life, I think, were my parents and my grandparents. Because they instilled in me, you know, how to carry yourself, how to act, you know, and education. Make sure you get a very good education. and basically other people in my life too. And that I try to instill in my children, but you know, nowadays it's hard for them to understand where we come from and all like that. But I think they're doing very well. 2 of them have passed, so it's only 1 left. But other than that, that's about it. And I think I've had a very blissful life compared, you know, to other people. You try to help everyone you can, you know, and do the best you can for them and yourself, and always keep God in your life. Because without Him, there is nothing. And basically, that's it.
I need to back up.
I think